Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce the first speaker. Chuck Spenser is President and Project Manager of Washington River Protection Solutions, where he leads a $7.1 billion remediation of radioactive and hazardous waste tanks at the Department of Energy's Hanford site. He is a 25-year veteran in the nuclear industry. He earned a civil engineering technology degree from Youngstown State University and a Juris Doctor degree from Cleveland Marshall College of Law. He serves on the board of directors for the Tri-City Economic Development Council and United Way of Benton and Franklin counties. Please help me welcome Chuck Spenser.
Well, thanks. This is quite an honor to be here today. Thank you for inviting us and giving us a chance to let you into our world a little bit at the Hanford Contractors and show you some of the great work that we're doing. Our 1,600 workers at WRPS do a great job every day, and your support is greatly appreciated. We'll start with Washington River Protection Solutions. What we do is we manage 177 underground tanks, which contains 57 million gallons of the worst radioactive waste known to man. No kidding. And what we do is we manage this in three major sections. The first section of what we do is we manage this vast infrastructure of these tanks and the associated 8,000, somebody was talking about requirements, 8,000 permit requirements on those farms. The second piece that we do is we manage a retrieval process. Part of our job is to move this waste from single shell tanks, some of which have leaked in the past and we've got the waste out, so that we can close those single shell tanks and move it to double shell tanks, which takes us to our third major part of this contract, which is to get ready for those double shell tanks to move the waste to Mr. Russo here, Frank. It's all about Frank in the end. You'll hear from him later. Next, I think, as a matter of fact.
Our mission is to protect the Columbia River and the millions of people living near it from the risk of Hanford's waste tanks. As the waste is moved out of our older single shell tanks and into the double shell tanks that are newer and safer, Washington River Protection Solutions is preparing for the commissioning of the world's largest radioactive waste treatment plant. Our success depends not only on building the vitrification plant, but on getting the tank farms ready for WTP operations. We've launched an integrated approach to manage and treat the tank waste, with the tank farms and the waste treatment plant combining our resources to develop the systems and skills that we need to be successful. By immobilizing Hanford's tank waste, we are removing the threat, helping to protect the Columbia River, and ensuring a safe future for our community.
As Recovery Act work ramps down here at WRPS, it is time to reflect on the outstanding progress we have made with the $326 million we received. Vital upgrades to the tank farm infrastructure have been accomplished, allowing us to prepare to deliver waste to the waste treatment plant. We have invested in facility upgrades and installation of state-of-the-art instrumentation at the 222S laboratory, which is a vital facility for our future. Lastly, and the most significant item, is that we have accomplished this work safely, on time, and on budget.
Over the last couple of years, we did a couple things that have really stood out in the way we're operating the tank farms. The first big thing, the thing that was truly an impacting change, was cutting a large hole in tank C107 to install the Mars arm. Why that was such a big deal is it's the first time it's ever been done, and it completely changed our options for how do we retrieve tanks. We're picking up the pace of single shell tank retrieval. That's pretty exciting. We're mobilizing after that and trying to identify how we can continue retrieval at a quicker and quicker pace so that we never have the VIP plant waiting for waste from the tank farms.
Every tank is different in the single shell tank world, and all technologies are not necessarily applicable across the board. When the TPA agreement was signed, we were very limited on the tools that were available to retrieve waste out of tanks. Since that time, we've had to develop the tools and the techniques necessary to retrieve the waste from the tanks, and that is an ongoing process as we continue our retrieval activities. There are challenges that we know in advance, and there are challenges that we can't anticipate and have to deal with as we get to them.
We're out here in Sea Farm where we're doing retrieval activities. In the background here you'll see essential components of the mobile arm retrieval system, which is called Mars Arm, which is being installed in C-107 tank. This is the latest technology for retrieval equipment in that it combines the sluicing technique to where we can articulate this arm that's going into the tank to the outer peripheral edges of the tank and basically sweep that waste to the pump that's in the center of the tank.
WRPS views our subcontractors, especially in the local community, as our teaming partners. They provide much needed talent, skills, resources that help support our overall mission. Since taking over the tank operations contract, WRPS has increased its opportunities significantly. For one, our goal, small business goal, has increased by 20%. Just in the last year and a half, we've infused $135 million in opportunities, awards to the local community, and a little over 65% has been to the small business community. And we rely on these small businesses. They are our partners.
Through our DOE mentor protege with WRPS, we're safely completing work on one of the most complex cleanup efforts in the nation. Total Site Services started in 2007 as a 3-person company, and in 4 years we've grown to a company of 21 people with over $14 million in sales. I'm really proud of our mutual accomplishments and being a part of the WRPS mission. The experience that's been afforded to TSS has allowed us to compete on a whole nother level. We work safer and we deliver to our customer an end result that we're really proud of.
The experience for our company has been tremendous. Initially narrowly focused on paper products, engineering deliverables, environmental permitting, and that had limited opportunity for us to grow. Through the protege relationship, WRPS has allowed us to expand that into taking those paper products and turning them into working systems that have use in the field. As a company, through that relationship, we've seen a growth from about 50 people 3 years ago to almost 200 today, and a really varied staff, from professional staff, engineering staff, environmental folks, on down to fabrication staff, welders, machinists, and frankly everything in between. For us, it's given us an opportunity to gain new skills and things that we believe will be of value not only now but in the long-term future in this region. We feel that part of our role as a business in this community is to be a part of that community, and the healthier our business is and the stronger we are, the more impactful we can become. For WRPS, it gives them access to a subcontractor that can think and move quickly and support their mission. We hope to continue to push the edge of what we can do, what we can do safer, what we can do more effectively, and continue to help WRPS improve on the tremendous performance record that they've set over the last 3 years.
I wish I had about a half hour to walk you through some of those technologies, because that's really the truth. That Mars arm you saw going in there, going to revolutionize the way we do retrievals, was essentially designed, tested, started up by a small business. The next one is the wiped film evaporator. Going to replace our huge evaporator with a very small unit. Again, designed, constructed, started up by a small business. I want to thank you, and I hope you feel part of our success. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Frank Russo, is the project director for Bechtel National Inc.'s waste treatment plant, the VIT plant project, the Department of Energy's $12.3 billion plant that will treat Hanford's 56 million gallons of liquid radioactive waste. He has more than 37 years' experience in engineering, procurement, construction, startup, commissioning, and business management, including experience in nuclear power plant construction and with the Department of Energy. Frank holds degrees in political science and business and law from Pace University and in construction engineering from the University of Texas. He is also a member of the Project Management Institute and a certified Six Sigma champion. Help me welcome Frank Russo.
So before I get started, Christina, I was really genuinely surprised that there's any controversy in your industry. Speaking for VitPlant, we wouldn't know what the term controversy meant.
In the southeast corner of Washington State, 25 miles north of Richland, a first-of-a-kind facility is being designed and constructed to immobilize millions of gallons of radioactive and chemical waste. The product of nearly 50 years of plutonium production is currently stored in 177 aging underground tanks at the Hanford site. The U.S. Department of Energy has selected Bechtel National Incorporated with principal subcontractor Washington Group to design and build a nuclear waste treatment facility to convert the radioactive liquid waste to solid glass, a process called vitrification. Vitrifying hazardous waste is necessary to isolate it from the environment and to protect the nearby Columbia River. In September 2001, construction began on the highly complex VIT plant. Spanning 65 acres, the plant includes 4 major nuclear facilities: pre-treatment, high-level waste vitrification, low-activity vitrification, and the analytical laboratory, as well as 20 support facilities and extensive underground systems. Treatment begins with the transfer of waste from the current storage tanks through an underground pipe-in-pipe system. The waste arrives at the waste treatment plant in the pre-treatment facility, where it is concentrated by removing water in an evaporation process. Solids are filtered out. The remaining soluble radioactive isotopes are removed by ion exchange. The high-level waste stream is sent to the high-level waste vitrification facility, while the remaining low-activity liquids are sent to the low-activity waste vitrification facility. In the high-level and low-activity waste facilities, the waste is mixed with glass-forming agents to create molten glass. It is then poured into canisters, cooled, and shipped off-site. A team of more than 3,000 has been assembled to address the challenges of treating Hanford's unique waste. The team includes engineers and other professionals, skilled crafts and suppliers from around the globe. All are committed to working safely. Numerous independent review teams composed of recognized experts from industry, academia, and the national laboratories have played an active role in the plant's design process. These experts have worked closely with our project team to ensure the plant operates safely, protecting the public and the environment. The plant is now more than 50% complete. More than 250,000 cubic yards of concrete, enough to fill nearly 75 Olympic-sized pools, will be placed. More than 170 miles of piping and more than 36,000 tons of structural steel, enough to build 3 Eiffel Towers, will be installed at this massive plant. The plant is now moving from design and construction to the construction and commissioning phase. Many of the challenges being overcome at the VIT plant have never been addressed anywhere in the world. Employees continue to safely advance this unprecedented engineering, construction, and environmental solution. As the cornerstone of Hanford cleanup, the project is pivotal to the future of the Columbia River and the Pacific Northwest in removing the threat posed by Hanford's radioactive liquid waste.
You've seen this, but this is a beautiful place to live. I've been actually building things, thank you, 37 is nice, but it's actually about 43 years that I've been doing this. Started very young. And I was building nuclear power plants in the 70s, and they were marvels. This makes a nuclear power plant look quite simple. Although it's inherently safer, we don't operate at the pressures or the temperatures that a nuclear power plant operates at, nor do we generate the hydrogen that a nuclear power plant generates. We'll generate in about 2 years what they generate in a second. It is nonetheless one of the most complex technological activities I've ever seen in my life, and I think anyone who comes close to it shares that feeling. And as a public works project, it gets a great deal of attention. We've invested over $500 million in academia to make sure we've gotten it right. One of the non-controversial things you'll hear about the waste treatment plant is that we put cost and schedule in front of safety and quality, and nothing can be further than the truth. I've been doing this my entire life. If you don't have safety and quality underpinning the job, the 3,500 friends and neighbors that live in this community and their children and their grandchildren would never want to produce great productivity and great advancement of a poor design solely to enrich a corporation. It's just an illogical mindset. We do want cost and schedule because Congress and the taxpayers want cost and schedule, but we also demand quality and safety to underpin that cost and schedule. When the video was made, we were just over 50% complete. I'm happy to announce on Tuesday of this week, we passed 60% complete. And if you just look at the construction, the engineering design, the construction portion of the job, and not the commissioning and startup, but it's physically built, and the operators, Chuck's folks, move in to start learning how to operate it, we're actually 65% complete. So we are well over the peak in terms of getting the design finalized, but there are several technical issues that are still being worked in terms of the mixing and in terms of the way we deal with our limited volumes of hydrogen. We have what we call a 369 schedule. Very easy to follow. 2013, all our engineers go home. They move on to new assignments. And some of them will move around the world. Others will stay here to work in the operating side. But the design will be complete. 2016, all of the construction will be complete. And then in 2019, we will get to the point where the operators are familiar enough with the plant and they've tested it enough that we'll actually introduce, through trucks, tanks, hot feed and start making real glass. Completing the design, as I said before, takes a lot of brain power. It's a very complicated plant. We've worked with academia, industry, some of our suppliers. We have a laboratory right near Washington, D.C. that runs melters for us pretty much 24 hours a day, small melters to test the melting process. And we do all our mixing testing right here in the Tri-Cities. Everyone agrees that WTP will treat a large fraction of the waste. The debate, the controversy, is it 100%, or is it 90%, or is it 85%? We don't think there's anyone out there that we can find that would say the plant won't process at least 85% of the waste. 85% of the waste represents 20 years of waste. But it also turned into glass. It also puts Chuck in a more enviable position of having what's left in his newest tanks, as opposed to a tank that will be 100 years old when the VIT plant mission is finally completed. So Chuck and I are partners, and that view graph up there shows it. When we look at the WTP, we don't look at just the facility, but we look at the waste, and we work in concert to make sure we know exactly what we're getting and how he's sending it to us, and in turn what we send him back as byproduct. For this project to be successful, the two of us literally have to be linked at the hip. And although I didn't sign up for that, I accept that responsibility. Everyone's going to show you a picture of the Columbia River when you're talking about the work at Hanford. I've lived in 22 places in my career with Bechtel. This is one of the most beautiful. It's one of the most appealing in terms of where you want to raise a family and live a life. And I would tell you that the only thing that stands in the way of this community is the stuff that we're responsible for getting rid of, all of us at this table. It's not just the liquid waste that we have, but the buried waste that you'll hear about from some of our other speakers. It is eminently important that we get this done, and we get it done before it's too late. And with that, I thank you.
Carol Johnson became president and project manager of Washington Closure Hanford earlier this month. She is responsible for leading cleanup of the $2.3 billion 10-year River Corridor Closure Project, the single largest DOE environmental cleanup closure project in the nation. Carol graduated from Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, with a degree in chemistry. Carol's 30 years of experience in the nuclear industry includes technical and managerial assignments at several DOE sites, including Savannah Riverside, Los Alamos National Laboratory, and Idaho National Laboratory. Please help me welcome Carol Johnson.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's really my honor and privilege to speak to you today. As Toby mentioned, I'm the newbie here in the crowd. I've been in my position for 2.5 weeks. So if I don't get something right, please let me know, or please forgive me for that. Well, we're quite proud of the work scope that the River Corridor Closure Project does, and as was mentioned, we're the DOE's largest environmental management cleanup project. And it's quite unique in that we're doing this major cleanup in amongst fairly significant nuclear operations going on all across the Hanford site. And our scope of work is targeted at the River Corridor, which is 220 square miles, with a significant amount of that real estate being along the Columbia River. Our work consists of really the closeout and cleanup of the reactor areas, the reactor sites, the old fuel production facilities known as the 300 area, and then we have a very large environmental disposal facility called ERDF, located in the center of the site that we're using to dispose of all of the remediation materials that we're cleaning out. We have a 10-year contract that ends in 2015, and this is not the normal situation where the contract gets rebid and recompeted. Our physical work scope completes at the end of 2015. So one of our challenges and one of my priorities going forward is in successfully transitioning our workforce from our project to other work, either locally within this community or at other locations on the Hanford site, or potentially outside of the area. We're a cost plus incentive fee contract, and we're a partnership between URS, Bechtel, and CH2M Hill. We are, the project as it stands right now, and as of this morning, as a matter of fact, we are 80.1% complete. Now that's a bit misleading because as in a lot of these kind of projects, the hard work is saved for the end. And that's kind of where we are. We've got a lot of major decommissioning work over the next 18 months and some significant work in the burial grounds and pulling a lot of really nasty stuff out of the ground. So the risk and hazards going forward is something that to me and my team we're really focusing on. We do some of the most heavy industrial work that I've had experience with. Lots of heavy equipment operation, lots of transportation, lots of just heavy industrial and radiologically hazardous work. A couple of these pictures I'd like to point out to you. The one on the bottom there, which is removal of a pump casing, that is coming from a river structure. And we have two major river structures that were intakes for the reactors. These river structures have to be completely demolished as part of our work scope. And so here we are, we're working right in the river. We're having to build sediment berms along the edge to completely remediate, restore the area back to its natural condition. And we have to do that work with lots and lots of regulatory input. As you would imagine, we're working in the river, so we have to worry about protection of fish, wildlife, and then, of course, the safety of the workers doing the work. So this is the kind of significant industrial work that we're doing. You know, I'm taking over this project at what I consider to be a very high point. Our performance, our cost and schedule performance is excellent, but more importantly, we have an outstanding safety record. In my 30-year career, I have never been involved in a project that puts safety in the forefront like the River Corridor project team. Our employees have worked 4.7 million man-hours without a lost workday case. And that is astounding given the kind of work that we're doing and the number of subcontractors that we have on this project. We haul material all over the site from the waste sites to the environmental restoration disposal facility, and we've logged 8 million miles without an at-fault accident. So our truck drivers, our Teamsters, the employees involved in that really take safety as a top value for them. So I just can't say enough positive about the safety performance and the track record of this team that I've inherited. You heard Chuck and Frank also talk about technology. Well, sometimes you think about technology and environmental remediation and cleanup. You know, you just kind of get a shovel out there or something simple to get that work done, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. We've deployed 36 technologies from the public sector and other government sites that deal with a lot of things, increasing worker efficiency, safety to the workers, and reducing overall cost. And just an example of one of those is a picture at the top, which shows a device that, it's a radiological monitoring device that we run over the railroad tracks. Part of our scope of work on this contract is to take out all of those railroad ties and dispose of them. And before we do that, they have to be monitored for radiological contamination. So we have removed, this piece of technology helped us to quickly and efficiently survey these tracks, and we have removed 30 miles of railroad tracks and safely disposed of them. Just a bit about the local community and our commitment to small business. We have substantial commitments in our contract relative to small business, and we subcontract a significant number to local businesses and to Washington State. And it is our goal. We will continue to do that. We have very close working relationships with our subcontractors. We're working side by side with our Washington Closure Hanford employees. And again, I'm very, very proud of the fact that we really work as one team from a safety perspective, from a culture perspective, from an accomplishment of work perspective. So this slide just shows the total procurement spending of $150 million. And in the local community, $75 million. So our project remains ahead of schedule and under budget. As I mentioned, we're at 80.1% complete. From a employment perspective, we'll be starting that transition of turning those numbers down. We employ right now close to 1,000 Washington Closure Hanford employees. We'll be starting to turn that number down in fiscal year 12, and then as we finish the decommissioning work at the end of FY13, we'll be turning that number down even more. And then, as I mentioned, we'll still have quite a bit of hard work left to do with the burial grounds and some work in 300 area that will continue on into FY14 and 15. And finally, I just want to touch on the Department of Energy's 2015 vision. The department has some substantial goals on footprint reduction, and River Corridor plays a key part in those goals. We've cleaned up and are in the process of turning back to the government about 60 square miles of real estate. By the end of this year, we will have turned over about another 38 square miles, so bringing the total to about 100 square miles at the end of this year. And then the reactor sites will carry forward into the next 3 years. So the government's very pleased with our performance in this regard, and it's something that's tracked very closely in headquarters. So just in closing, for me and taking over this project, one of the most important things, of course, is safety and disciplined operations in what we do. We, like the other Hanford contractors, are highly visible, doing heavy industrial work. We have the substantial challenge of transitioning our employees to other employment over the course of time. And so people, respect for the employees, respect for what they do, caring about them is one of the most significant things on my mind right now. So I'm very proud to be on this project, very proud to live in this community. And I'll close by saying I really like red wine, and so I truly think that I have died and gone to heaven by living in this area. Thank you very much.
John Lehew is the President and Chief Executive Officer for CH2M Hill Plateau Remediation Company located in Richland. The project mission includes decommissioning and remediating the Central Plateau 100K area and the site groundwater. The project is $5.3 billion and is a 10-year contract. John has more than 27 years of nuclear operations. He earned his bachelor's degree in marine engineering systems from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in Kingsport, New York, and his master's in ecological engineering from the Colorado School of Mines. He is a licensed marine engineer and is Naval Reactors Engineer qualified. Please help me welcome John Lehew.
Thank you. I'm honored to be representing CH2M Hill here today, and glad to be with you all at this wonderful luncheon. CH2M Hill has been part of this community for several decades now, from a corporate perspective with respect to our water and wastewater management projects as well as transportation. And we've been part of the Hanford site now for 15 years in supporting the cleanup efforts out there. So with that, a little bit about our project and the company. So the project started in 2008, fiscal year 2009, October 2008. It's a 10-year contract, 5-year base period with a 5-year option periods, nominally valued, as was mentioned, at about $5.3 billion. And I'll talk a little bit more about the scope of that project as we go forward. We were one of the companies across the complex that was awarded a significant amount of Recovery Act funds. Just about 2.5 years ago, we were awarded $1.3 billion in Recovery Act funds. And during that period, we were able to double the size of the workforce. So we nominally have about 4,000 folks out there working every day in this highly hazardous environment. And it's a tribute to this workforce for the amount of work that we get done safely and the safety culture that we have on this site and in this community. So a tribute to them for the amount of work that we get done. Like you've seen from many of the other speakers thus far, We are very happy to be part of the community. We rely on this community for the support for the work as well as the businesses that support us. We have some pretty significant small business goals on our contract, and to date we've awarded more than $800 million, nearly $850 million in small business or in contract awards to small businesses. And about 49% of our work goes to small businesses, with a large majority of that going here directly in Benton and Franklin County. So we're very proud of that and very happy about the support you all give us in this community to make us successful. We are on schedule, below cost, and working very effectively and safely on this project. A little bit about Tcrcc to see if that clicks forward. C.H. Toom Hill Plateau Remediation Company is, C.H. Toom Hill is the prime contractor. We have two major subcontractors, Floor Federal Services and Arriva, both of who I'm sure you're familiar with, and then 9 other pre-selected subcontractors. And those subcontractors encompassed our team as we came in. But that is by no means just the scope of who's doing the work out there. We have more than 1,500 other companies supporting our work on the site and around the community on any given day. So huge support from the subcontracting community on this project. The scope of our work, the title is kind of a misnomer, Plateau Remediation and the Central Plateau Contract, because we also have several other major areas of the site. We are responsible for the entire cleanup of the entire 290 square miles that surrounds the site, which is known as the Arid Lands, Rattlesnake Mountain, and the North Slope. We're also responsible for the 100K area, which is along the Columbia River. It's a dual reactor facility. And then on the Central Plateau, we're responsible for the main Central Plateau facility complex with regard to where the plutonium processing and uranium processing was done. And that's the inner 75 square miles of the site. And I'll show you kind of the charts and the site's vision here in a minute. In total, we're responsible for more than 800 facilities, the operation, decommissioning, and cleanup of those facilities, and more than 1,200 waste sites. And then in addition to that, we're responsible for the cleanup of all of the groundwater across the site. There's more than 80 square miles of contaminated groundwater plumes under the site, all the way from the Central Plateau down to and along the Columbia River. And we take that responsibility very seriously about cleaning up that groundwater, and I'll talk a little bit more about the progress that we've made there in my upcoming slides. But a significant amount of work cleaning up both the hazard constituents, both radiological and chemical hazard constituents in that groundwater under the site. And then lastly, we're responsible for all of the waste management activities on the site, with the exception of the ERDF facility that Carol mentioned, which is operated by the wash and closure Hanford contractor. So we do all the other liquid and solid waste management on the site. So that kind of gives you an idea of the scope of the project. So I want to talk a little bit about this chart with regards to footprint reduction. The thing I would say that I find with working with the rest of the contractors on the site is all of the contractors on the site have a shared vision of success of what the cleanup effort is. I mean, it's amazing when we talk together and we look at priorities and where we want to work. We recognize that everything is about Frank and the VIT plant, but we all have a common vision and goal of shrinking that site footprint down to where we're cleaning up the Central Plateau, cleaning up the tank farm weights, and treating them and putting it into a solidified form. So great alignment between all the contractors. And this kind of shows you that vision of shrinking the site footprint. So the left-hand side there, as you look at it, is the 586 square miles of the site. With the advent of the Recovery Act funds, we are able to clean up the 290 square miles of that outer perimeter of the site. And then a significant contribution just within the last couple of years with WCH of almost nominally another 100 square miles with that. And you can see the white areas. So the original goal with Recovery Act funds was to remediate 49% of the Hanford site by the end of 2011, by the end of this September. And between the work that all the contractors are doing out there, we're going to exceed that goal and beat it, and have remediated and cleaned up about 65% of the site, so significant progress there. And then the goal is to get to, by 2015, as you heard mentioned, the 2015 vision, The goal is to get to about 90% cleanup by 2015. And right now we're projecting to exceed that in the 92 to 93%, especially with the significant work from Carol and her team and Chuck before that on the river corridor. So, and then ultimately the goal is to get down, as I said, to get down to that final 10 square miles of the site where the bulk of the primary processing facilities are, the tank farms are, and the vit plant, to then clean up that other high hazard materials in the inner core of the Central Plateau. And that is nominally less than 10 square miles and less than 2% of the Hanford site footprint. So that gives you an idea of where we're heading. And so accomplishments to date and where we are, I'll just very briefly show you this chart. On the left-hand side there, the red dots up on there are where we were working as a contract when we took over this contract in October of 2008. The red dots you see there on the right-hand side are where we're working today. So that's where we're doing active cleanup work across the site, both buildings, soils, and groundwater remediation across the site. So a few significant accomplishments in the first 3 years of our contract period. We've demolished more than 120 nuclear, radiological, and industrial facilities. We've currently, to date, reduced the Hanford site footprint by 250 square miles in those outer areas, and we'll finish the 290 square miles by this September. We've completed all of our 78 tri-party agreement milestones on or ahead of schedule over the last 3 years. We've now prepared the U Canyon facility for demolition. That'll be the first of the kind demolition of a canyon facility in the DOE complex. And for those of you who aren't familiar with canyon facility, it's basically nominally the size of an aircraft carrier. So pretty significant sized, complex industrial piece of equipment, processing equipment, and we'll have that prepared for demolition 2 years ahead of its tri-party agreement milestone. We were asked to accelerate waste shipments with the advent of Recovery Act funds, and we accelerated transuranic waste shipments again on the site by 4 years and have completed 199 shipments to date, and we will exceed the goal planned by this September. And then lastly, we're accelerating the decommissioning of the plutonium finishing plant ahead of the tri-party agreement milestone, which is due in 2016, and we will beat that by a couple of years. From a groundwater remediation standpoint, the chart that you see up there shows the original in 2009, the capacity of treating groundwater. And typically, when we took over the contract, we were treating about 500 million gallons of groundwater per year. Today, we're treating more than 700 million gallons of groundwater per year, and by the end of this calendar year, we'll be treating more than 1 billion gallons of groundwater per year under the site. And that's not insignificant because many of the groundwater plumes are nearly between 300 and 500 feet deep under the Central Plateau. This year alone, we've drilled 370 groundwater wells, anywhere from a depth along the river to 20 to 60 feet to 500 feet deep under the Central Plateau. And we have now completed construction of all of the groundwater treatment facilities along the Columbia River and are seeing huge effects at keeping the chromium 6 contamination that's along the Columbia River from getting into that river, seeing huge progress in shrinking those plumes and treating that water. So we're making great progress there. Chromium 6 is a hazardous chemical constituent which is dangerous to the salmon in the river. And so that's why it's of utmost importance of us to treat that and contain that and treat that chromium. So we are making significant progress there. And then lastly, the bottom picture you see there is the 200 West area on the Central Plateau. It's a groundwater treatment facility, which will be the largest groundwater treatment facility in the Department of Energy EM Environmental Management Complex. And that will treat the major carbon tetrachloride and uranium plumes that are under the Central Plateau. And that facility, we will complete construction of that facility this year and be starting it up into operations in early calendar year 2012 to treat that groundwater. So lastly, I'd just like to thank you for your time. I would like to, as many of you know from the news that you've seen, there are some major workforce restructuring activities that are going to happen over the course of the next couple of months here at the site. We are hosting a job fair at the track facility on August 19th, Friday. It's going to run from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I would encourage any of you with businesses, we've got a lot of skilled workers between the contractors on the site who will be available for future careers, and would encourage a lot of you all with businesses here on the site have an opportunity to pick up some, look at and pick up some skilled workers from that job fair that we're going to be hosting. And that'll be at the track facility on August 19th from 8 to 5 p.m. And if you'd like to register for that or look into that more, you can get on our external website for CH2M Hill Plateau Remediation Company and get the information there, or certainly contact our communications or HR departments. So with that, I thank you for your time.
Dave Ruscitto joined Mission Support Alliance, or MSA, in August of 2010 as Chief Operations Officer. Dave has over 35 years of nuclear experience and civil engineering design and project and construction management for both commercial and governmental clients. Dave's experience includes 6 years in the Navy as a nuclear Navy officer and worked for 5 years with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in New Hampshire. Early in his career as a Peace Corps volunteer, Dave designed and constructed small to medium scale water projects in rural Kenya. During the Iraq War, he led a reconstruction and development team. Returning to Hanford in 2007, Dave worked for Fluor as their project lead for the K-Basin Sludge Treatment Project and served as Fluor Hanford's president and CEO. Please help me welcome Dave Ruscitto.
The Mission Support Alliance is actually made up of 5 key areas that we support the primary contractors on. So MSA, like all the other contractors, is really a team. We're made up of 3 prime companies: Jacobs Engineers, Lockheed Martin, and Wackenhut Services. Wackenhut provides safeguards and security. Our guard force, nationally renowned for running guard forces throughout the Department of Energy and overseas support. Jacobs Engineering, one of the nation's largest international architect engineers. And of course, Lockheed Martin, who's had a long-time presence in the Tri-Cities, both working on infrastructure projects, early cleanup contractors, and then now with the information technology sector. So we form a good and complementary partnership. In addition, we have many small business subcontractors, some of whom are listed here, that were pre-selected, and the hundreds of others who have opportunities to bid on our projects and the services that we provide and the materials that we bring out. So we're essentially the city manager for Hanford. If you think about Hanford, it's really about the size of the city of Los Angeles, and the infrastructure requirements for a city that large is really quite daunting. This just gives you some sense of the scale of the work that we do out there. $450 million gallons of water is treated every year: potable water, raw water for use of the other contractors, cooling water, drinking water, processed water for the facilities, the water that helps to make the concrete for the waste treatment plant, all the services, over 100 miles of water lines. And many of these water lines, by the way, were built during the Manhattan Project. They're 40, 50, and 60-year-old lines, and they're going to have to support potentially 40 more years of operation. So you can imagine the challenge of keeping this infrastructure going that was built that long ago to support a brand new project. And so when you talk about infrastructure, it's not only maintaining what we have, but it's working very closely with the other contractors to understand their needs in the future. So as the waste treatment plant comes up, as Chuck mentioned, $3 billion worth of new construction. That's going to require roads. It's going to require new electric power lines, new transformers, new substations, water, office buildings, all of that infrastructure, sewage treatment. We have to be in on the front end of that to try and understand their needs and then position ourselves with the Department of Energy to make the best decisions that we can make. Now, there's 2 ways you can do that. One, you can just let anybody do whatever they want and then figure it out as you go along, or you can plan ahead. And I think you've all seen examples of that in the private sector where real estate is not adequately planned, zoned, or managed, And in the early stages, that may be expedient, but in the long run, it's much less effective. And so the Department of Energy has charged us with being the Planning and Zoning Commissioner. So we run the public works, just like a city runs public works. We run planning and zoning, just like a city runs planning and zoning. And we have all that infrastructure work that we not only have to keep going, but we have to plan for the future. And of course, the infrastructure is always the last thing that people think about. They think about the processes first, and they get the things funded, and then the infrastructure tends to be an afterthought. And so we're trying to work as closely as we can with the department to come up with innovative solutions and offer suggestions. So preparing for the future, what do we see coming for Hanford and mission support? A commercial delivery model. DOE has asked us to try and bring in the best things of how operations occur in the private sector and adapt those to the government operations. It's not always easy. It requires breaking some paradigms, both within our own organization and the people who've worked at Hanford for a long time. And there's a lot of inertia that's involved in doing these things, and for every inefficient program, there's at least one sponsor who would like to keep it the way it is. But in fact, a new customer service model where we actually view our cleanup contractors as our customers is actually quite a new thing. And I can't say we're fully successful yet. We're working hard at it. Just like when the lights go off, that's when I get the call. And so the more times I get a call, the more more challenges we have to fix. But more and more people are calling me also to say, hey, that was a great job. We really appreciate the support that your crane and rigging team did to get our job done at the last minute. Right-sizing the infrastructure doesn't always mean making it smaller. Sometimes it means looking at the future and making it the right size for what's coming in advance of the need. And then expecting, maybe things are going to change. We'll try and stay up with the latest plans. So we have a strategic planning partnership with DOE where we're looking across all the contractors. It's called portfolio management. We're looking at DOE's budgets, where things are headed, and of course we know that changes frequently, but we try and forecast the best we can about what's going to be needed in the future and how can we position the site to be ready for those so that we can stay on top of the infrastructure costs. Sometimes it means making investments. In order to save money in the future, you might have to replace equipment or concepts with things that have long life cycle paybacks. And of course, that's another paradigm shift in the government, would be to make an investment today to save money in the future. And that was easier during the ARA days. But now that the ARA is ending and the budgets are very, very tight, it's not so easy to convince people that if we could just put a little bit of money in this over here, it's going to save us tenfold down the road. Those are some of the kinds of things that we're talking about. Clean energy is another DOE initiative that we've been tasked by the DOE manager, Matt McCormick, to lead the way on. As you know, Secretary Chu really has a strong laboratory background. His focus is on clean energy. Energy efficiency. So we have, a part of our mission is working on energy efficiency, clean energy out at the site. It really serves two purposes. It forwards the government's goal of energy efficiency and clean energy, but also when we can save money on vehicles and fleets and fuel. For example, we've already got 189 alternative fuel and electric vehicles out on site, and every time we replace a vehicle now, we replace it with a hybrid or an electric vehicle. One of those investments I talked about is we're putting electric charging stations out on the site. We'll be bringing electric vehicles in as soon as you can buy them. They have a long lead time now, but once we can start bringing electric vehicles in, it's the perfect thing for the site. It's relatively small, the speeds are low in most cases. Some of the commuters would tell you otherwise, but most of the trips on the site could be made with electric vehicles and strategically placed charging stations. That's going to save fuel for every contractor. That's going to save, which is a huge cost, by the way. You all know what fuel cost has done these last years. We've reduced the cost to our contractors for the rates of every service except one, and that's our logistics, where we have to pass on the rising cost of fuel. So again, more dollars saved out of the infrastructure, more dollars available for cleanup. The community. The MSA has a commitment to the community. Many of you are familiar with the Hammer Training Center, Hazardous Material Management and Emergency Response. It's a national asset. What you might not understand is it not only does a great job of training Hanford workers, primarily in safety and hazardous materials, radioactive training, but we bring in a lot of training from the outside. The National Guard comes in and trains with us on radiological response, so that the National Guard will be prepared for a dirty bomb or something like that. Department of Homeland Security comes in, and we provide training for them. We have cargo container mock-ups, and we hide radioactive materials in various places, and we train the ports, the people who work in our ports, to detect radioactive materials before they can get into the country. We train foreign countries under Department of State contracts, anti-terrorism, weapons of mass destruction training. All of those missions are actually done at Hanford. Very few people are aware of that. And by the way, all of those people who come here stay in hotels and eat in restaurants during the time that they're here for training. So Hammer actually generates quite a bit of revenue for the site as well. So I'd like to conclude simply by saying that when DOE put this contract together, the idea was leave the cleanup to the cleanup contractors, those folks that have the expertise to do the cleanup, and try and bring someone in who had experience in infrastructure and who was willing to fight some of those hard battles to drive those entrenched costs down. And I can say that today we've been successful. We still have a long way to go, both in shrinking the infrastructure and improving our customer service. But every year we're doing a better job, and we're very, very happy to be part of the cleanup team. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to GISA Credit Union, our luncheon sponsor, Charter Communications for filming today's program, for rebroadcast, Heather and the staff at Three Rivers Convention Center for their hospitality, and to our Hanford contractors for taking time from your business to present this important information to our Tri-Cities business community. And remember, it's good business to do business with Tri-City Regional Chamber members. Thank you.